her being a chef and obviously into baking and stuff like that. And we talked about some reality TV chefs and mental health within the restaurant sector. Obviously, we see a dramatized version on TV a lot where the chefs are shouting and cursing, but Ria could confirm that she's seen some of that herself and how maybe even young people going into the industry it would affect them a lot greater. So it was a great chat. Um, the lighting might seem a bit different because I'm recording this at just after 7 a.m. on a Saturday morning. We're going through our little heat wave, and I wanted to get it done early because this room gets very, very warm. But the lighting seems slightly brighter because the sun is at the back of the house. Just in case you're wondering why I'm lit up like this, I didn't yet buy a new ring light. This ring light is still something of an enemy to me, because it makes me look blue. I think I look a bit brighter than blue today, so maybe I'm doing all right. Who knows? But I might look a bit tired too, actually. Anyway, that's it's for another day to discuss. But yeah, there's a number of reasons I want to do this episode. There's you know, um, I'm I wanted to talk about the therapy I've been going through. I think I'm 6 sessions in. It's 5 or 6. I'm pretty sure it's 6. And I want to discuss kind of the things that go along with that. The reason I went for, the obsessive compulsive stuff, the worrying about time, trying to control time, which is a silly statement in itself, but this is the way the brain works. But we've gone through, as I went into this therapy thinking that this is what we needed to work on, like we've figured out other stuff that popped up that I didn't quite expect. Maybe it's been a while since I've been in therapy, so you kind of forget. I thought I was just going to have to deal with the stuff on the surface level, but turns out that's not the way it works. So yeah, like it's been there was a problem with the guest last week. That's one of the reasons I'm doing a solo. I was going to be doing one soon anyway about the therapy, but the guest didn't turn up, and for very good reason in the end. But at the time, I didn't know that, so I was really, again, goes back to this idea of obsessive compulsive disorder, where they were supposed to turn up at 6 o'clock last week, and once it gets to 1 minute past 6, I'm already starting to get like itchy palms, and I'm thinking like, oh, I'm being put out, like, even though they're doing me a favor in my own something of twisted logic. I'm kind of starting to get a bit put out, but like, pay 10 past, there's no word, 20 past, there's no word, and I'm sitting there with everything set up, and I'm thinking, should I put all this away? Should I wait a little bit longer? But then the side of my brain that I am struggling with was just getting annoyed and flustered and stuff like that. So I shut everything down, and that was that, not the way to go about it. So I was eventually contacted by the guest, and they explained the situation. And then obviously you feel terrible, because that's the whole thing about it. It's like, as if everybody should be dancing through hoops for me just because I have a problem with certain things that I'm trying to work on. Like, people have lives, and whether it's kids or maybe their parents are ill, whatever it might be. I'm just kind of discarding that, like, for my own, oh damn it, we should be here in time, when I'm sitting here in my room. Not like, it's not like I'm stuck out anywhere and um with problems if I don't do it on time. It's not like that. So there was a little bit of that, and I was a little bit upset, but to be honest, I realized now I was being a bit of a dope, and I should have just relaxed. But I guess that's the reason for going to therapy and trying to figure some of this out, because it's becoming too much for me, that it's affecting moods and stuff like that, and that kind of stuff, like, it kind of if your mood is affected, you're going to affect other people's moods, and that's not what I want to do at all. Like, so yeah, look, there's a lot to uncover in this in this kind of episode. So um yeah, so as some of you know, that I did post it out at the time that I was going to start going back to therapy, and um the very, very kind and brilliant Joanne and Tracy. So they're both working at Dancing Soul. Joanne O'Dwyer is an art therapist. Tracy Bulger's a hypnotherapist, and they I approached a couple of them to ask them who, could they recommend someone to me for therapy for in particular what I was looking for. And Joanne got back to me with Kenneth's name, Kenneth Ledan. He also works in the Dancing Soul. And Tracy, obviously, I wanted to confirm with both of them because I contacted both of them. It's only the right thing to do. And Tracy kind of said, "Yeah, go for it." So, it's interesting. Like I wasn't in any way um nervous about the sessions, or I think some people can be a little bit, they see therapy as a negative thing, that it's maybe like go, especially if you've gone through therapy before, and you think it's a negative thing to have to go back, like you're taking a back step. And I didn't think like that this time. And that's why I was so, had no problem putting it up, to mention it and say this is what I'm doing, because it's a positive thing. You're helping yourself. It's, why when all these resources are there, why would you not do it? It's a literally to improve your own life. So I went into Kenneth the first day, not nervous, to be honest. I'd say if I was, I would have been quite relaxed fairly quickly, because Kenneth is a very, very a nice fella, very easy to chat to, even if, I'm not good at, well, maybe I'm getting better, but I believe that I'm not good at small talk, and everything starts with small talk. But there wasn't any of that kind of stuff, and obviously that instantly puts you at ease. And there's a thing that I spoke to Kenneth about, and I've spoken about this in the podcast before. He sits on the other side of the room. Like, that for me is hugely important, because to open yourself up um about your anxieties and worries and stuff like that, you need this. I literally need physical space to do that, because there's a vulnerability to it. Whether you're comfortable in the situation or not, you are vulnerable about it. So I need that bit of space where I can kind of express myself in, and for the other person to, not be encroaching on it, just to be sitting there. And Kenneth has a great way, and I don't think everybody that I've been to has this. He has a great way of not of allowing me to talk, but not to ramble, because it's very easy to ramble because you can go off topic. And I think that some of that is conscious decisions as well, to go off topic, because sometimes when you go into something that it is quite deep that you weren't expecting to say, you'll start to move away from it quite quickly. But like, Kenneth has a way of like honing in on it, and then obviously opening up new avenues is how we can kind of talk about it and express it in different ways. And that's, obviously that's a massive thing, and it's up that, that's the very reason for me going, because I can't find those ways without somebody to help me get there. Like, when I went away from the first session was very much like getting to know each other. Ken is very open about his past, so he's talking to you about that, and again, that puts you at ease. And you don't. Again, we talk about this, and I've spoken about this in the podcast before. Kenneth, well dressed, but not sitting there in a suit and tie. And I think that the suit and tie, sometimes when you go to somebody in, when I was going to the mental health care place in whether it was Westmead or Roscommon, like, you're going to someone with a suit and tie, the authority figure thing is always there. And I've spoken about this about doctors and stuff. You're never quite allow yourself to be as kind of open and kind of loose as you would be. So for Kenneth to be there in his pants and his shirt, there's more of a relaxed vibe with that as well. So after I left the first one, I felt good. I thought, yeah, no, definitely going back to Kenneth. That's great. I found someone that can help me, and this is a positive step forward. When I went back to the second one, and it started to become like a therapy session. Obviously we went quite deep with certain things, and what came up, something that came up was quite interesting to me, was the idea of self-worth, and I didn't realize how low my self-worth is at times. And we went back a bit to when I was when I was young, and I remember, don't have a good memory But I remember being in the back of a car with my mum. I think I said this on here before. I definitely said to someone recently, not besides Kenneth, obviously, that I asked her why I was so ugly. Like, and that was I don't know what the offset. I don't remember what the build up to that was. I just remember looking in the rear view mirror, and I could see her face, obviously, where she was sitting. And I said that, and I don't think I am now. By the way, that was obviously at the time. I think I'm all right. I think I'm a 4 out of 10. I know, but it was an interesting way because it led to that whole thing, like things that I wasn't expecting to discuss. I thought it was going to be surface level OCD. Why I'm obsessed with looking at time. Why I'm obsessed that everything has to be in a certain controlled way and a timely manner. And then we went deeper than that, and we kind of talked a bit about how I was being picked on. And when I come down to Athlone on my holidays, and on some weekends, I'd be picked on down here, by lads, and unfortunately it was just a case of not having someone exactly around my own age. So I used to hang around with people who were a couple of years older, and they'd pick on me a bit. But when I was in Dublin with my own friends, obviously that wouldn't happen at all. So, and I never didn't want to come down. Like, that was the whole thing. But you kind of know, and you get worried and you get anxious. And look, that's where it kind of comes from. I suppose that's where it started. So I start, that affects your self worth. And then when we talked about, for instance, someone putting my time out, knocking my time out, and an ideal example would be the guest not turning up last week. It's one thing that it affected the OCD in the time, but it's another thing that it affected my belief that I wasn't worthy of their time. And that's the part of it. That's not the conscious thing, that's like the unconscious thing. The conscious thing was like, oh, you've knocked out my time, and I'm anxious about that. But the unconscious, to begin with anyway, is, oh, I wasn't worthy of your time. So it's a constant need within me to feel like worthy of people, and almost situations and times. And I didn't. I was taking all these like little knockbacks really, really harshly on myself, and it was always me. It was never the other person, because I guess it's easier to try and figure out yourself than the other person. I don't know. Well, obviously it is, because you don't know the other person, what they're thinking deep down, like I'm talking now. But self worth is a massive thing that came up, and as we've been going along the sessions, even if we haven't talked about that within each session, it's popped into my brain. Is that self-worth thing? Is that, and it's really interesting. Like, it's an unpleasant feeling to sit in, but when I go away from the sessions, it is quite, you know, part of it is like, great, we're making progress, but it's quite difficult to take that hour to talk about openly and honestly about things that are, you know, affecting you, and not for you to carry that away and be affected for a day or two afterwards, and to try and figure things out. Ultimately, it'll be a good thing in the end, because I need to think things through without Kenneth sitting in front of me too, But it is hard to, it is something to carry afterwards. Uh, but it's the way Kenneth has been helping me open certain, like, little vaults in my mind that I kind of shut, um, like the self worth thing. And I've been able to kind of figure some things out since, and I'm able to point things out now where I can think, oh, that's because of self worth. It's not because of anxiety. It's not because of the times, and things like that. So it's been funny to kind of deal with that, but at the same time, I've been taking on kind of more responsibility at the gym. Martin's been very kind, and I think that's a big thing for me, that Martin has. I think one thing I'm instantly thinking, like, why am I taking sessions? Why am I a coach, and why? It's because Martin has made that decision, based on certain on a lot of things, I guess. But um, it's a little bit of a boost that he thinks that I'm able to do it. That's the whole point of it. Um, but I've taken on the duty, and I'm cleaning and tidying the place. Now, I was doing that kind of unofficially, but now I'm doing it officially. Uh, and there's been some, some interesting things about. I'm really trying not to see it as I spoke about, my room is my room. I like it to be tidy and neat because it's my area. But if Anne is downstairs in the front room and changes things up, I don't, want to change things back because it's not my area. You know what I mean? So it doesn't matter where she puts things downstairs. So it's within my bedroom and the room where I have my TV and stuff. But now I don't want this to happen, but it has been happening, and now it's a little bit of a battle for me not to let it get too out of hand. But what happens is, so if I clean on a Monday and Thursday morning, and I come in on a Monday evening, and there's people use chalk to do pull-ups in there and stuff like that, and there'd be chalk on the floor and chalk handprints on the floor, which are quite difficult to get out properly, and I'm kind of freaking out about it sometimes. So we were in there one day, and this was a big thing that came up afterwards. But we are in there one day, and I was chatting to one of the other people who trained there, and chatting about therapy and stuff. They asked me about therapy, and I was telling them about therapy and opening up to the idea of chalk being on the floor and different things like that. So it was quite, within the moment and of where we were, that it was important. So about 20 minutes later, the same person decided to get some chalk out of the box and sprinkle it on the floor in front of me. They were smiling at me. Now, on a different day, I might have thought differently about it, but on that day, having spoken quite openly to that person about it and them to do it right in front of me, it felt like an insult and a kind of slap. And when I spoke to Kenneth afterwards, it was down to self-worth that this person was, I felt this person was above me and they didn't care of how I felt because of what they did, just doing that real kind of, there was a smugness to it, and there was a kind of, I felt at the time there was a nastiness to it, and I don't feel that now, but I did at the time. So we basically had a whole session talking about that. And I still couldn't wrap my head around it for a while, and I can now, but it took me a while. And subsequently, the person a couple of days later apologized to me for doing it, and obviously I accepted it. There is no problem. I don't have any problem with the person now, and I realized it was meant as a kind of a joke, and as they said, trying to push the boundaries and stuff. But I think those boundaries weren't quite ready to be pushed at the time. But now, obviously, we have. It was Kenneth doesn't give me the homework per se, but he gave me it's really silly, right, to people, and I realize it's silly and it's kind of funny. But when I'm warming up for the women's class, I do like the warm ups, the start, and I'll do 10 chin to chest to warm up the neck, 10 ear to ear, stuff like that. And then for some reason on the first session I did do 7 spinal rotations. It doesn't matter what they are, but they're just stretches, right? They're kind of stretch. And I immediately, from then on, it had to be 7 because that's just the way the mind goes. And one of them said to me about 3 weeks ago, said, "Why is it 7?" And obviously I was said this jokingly and stuff like that because not everybody knows the situation. And I said, well, because it's 7, it always has been and always will be. Now this came up with Kenneth because I wanted to talk to him about it, like, because I thought, like, why does it have to be 7? Why is it 7? Like, why wasn't it 10? Why wasn't it 5? I picked 7. I'd normally pick I don't know, 5 and 10 makes more sense, but so yeah, so Kenneth said to me, it was last week or the week before, he said, why don't you change it, like, change it to 8 or whatever. So for 2 days I was thinking about it, like, will I do it? Will I be able to do it? And I didn't. I was gonna say, right, do 8, and I couldn't do it, right? So 7. But then, like, the following week, which is, just gone, just last Wednesday, I did 8, and one of them looked up at me as if to say, I think he got his number wrong. But I just said, look, I'm just trying to push things, kind of, again, jokingly and stuff. But that was a big win, for me. That was like, I know it sounds really small and silly, but it was actually quite a big win to change that and to, it's fun. I'm not even doing the move. Like, that's what's weird about it. Like, why does it? Anyway, it's a very strange way to be. But all this kind of chalk on the floor, untidiness in the gym, constantly trying to clean things. I'm now in a not a battle, because I don't want to call it a battle because then it makes it sound really tough, But I'm just trying to work out, like, and try to remain on a level where the gym will not be always how I would like it to look, everything stacked neatly and no chalk on the floor. That's silly, especially in the summer. Everybody needs the chalk to hang off those bars. It gets pretty sweaty in there. Especially this week, it's like 30 degrees every day. But yeah, I'm trying not to allow that to get too much. But and then there's the other, the opposite end of the kind of imposter syndrome idea. And Kenneth, this was brilliant, but by I would never have thought of this without Kenneth. So I started, and people might know, listen to this regularly, I passed my CrossFit course. So Martin gave me a couple of classes. So I was doing one on the kind of a surprise one on the Monday, or on the I think it was Tuesday morning or Wednesday morning, and it was quite strange to do it at that early, and but everybody knew what they were doing. Was really cool. So when I took on the next class, and I felt the imposter syndrome and the idea of like, who am I to be telling some of these people who have done CrossFit for longer than me how to do what they're supposed to do? But can I put it this way? He said to me, "Who's the best footballer in the world?" I think I said Mbappe, but whether it's Messi, Ronaldo, Mbappe, it doesn't really matter that much. It's just, who's your idea of the best footballer in the world? And what about their coaches? Do they think that they're better than Messi or Mbappe? And that's the whole idea of what Martin said to me. Is it's one thing knowing what you have to do, but it's another thing entirely of communicating it. There might be some of the best CrossFitters in the world who'd be able to show you every single move, but couldn't communicate it to other people. And I was trying to start to think of it that way, but the idea that there's coaches for Mbappe that couldn't, get anywhere near his level of football. And that for me was just like, if you are suffering from imposter syndrome or dealing with confidence issues, how to think differently within situations that you're put in, where you are the coach or the manager or whatever the situation might be. So I just thought that was a brilliant analogy, and that's what my thoughts were on at that moment. So for the last 5 or 6 sessions that I've had with Kenneth, they've been really great. They've been really eye-opening. One of the first sessions, he put a bin. There's a bin next to me, and he just placed it on the floor on its side, and he just kind of sat back in his seat, and it was in the corner of my eye. And everything he said after that, as the bin was on the floor, I wasn't listening to, because all I was thinking was, and it wasn't even so much, what's the point in putting the bin on the floor, or why would you put the bin on the floor? Like, nobody would have that in a room with the bin on the floor, so that wouldn't happen in real life. What was going through my head was, why do I care about a bin on a floor when it isn't my room? And I think that's what's become more difficult, and that's one of the reasons why I started therapy. That the outside of my my rooms and my house and my comfort zone were becoming something that I felt I wanted to control more. And I'm worrying that if I didn't have that control, that all my problems with anxiety and things like that would come to the fore. And that's not the case. And I realize that now. We've got a few more sessions to do. But I hope that helped you, helps like explain what I've been doing in the sessions and stuff. But yeah, I want to thank Kenneth, obviously, brilliant therapist in the Dancing Soul here in Athlone. Let me read an advert, if you don't mind, and I'll take a drink. It's very strange talking for this long, even though I'll probably talk for this long to people all the time that want me to shut up. Okay. Fusion Training Centre, Monksland, Athlone. A place to train in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, kickboxing, martial arts and CrossFit. A great atmosphere with experienced coaches and a real sense of community. If you want to join the team, find us on Facebook at Fusion Training Centre or drop in for a chat. Fusion Training Centre, train like a warrior. Women's classes are flying, with a few people in last night, and fair play, because the heat in that gym last night was intense. But they were there and they were rolling, and I really, really enjoyed the classes with them, to be honest. And not just, the jiu-jitsu side of it, and, passing on some of the knowledge that I have, but because of them, because they're such a great bunch, and very, they ask questions, which is, so important. But I think lads are just to hold back from asking questions for some reason. It's like thinking, oh, I don't want to ask this question, it's a dumb question. Well, it's not a dumb question if you only just started doing jiu-jitsu. Everything is valid. So I really love it. but yeah, you can sign up for for a free class if you want to try it on the Fusion Training Center Instagram page or Facebook page. Just give them a shout in there anyway. Have a drink, well deserved. It's already starting to boil in this room. Try not to swallow in front of it with the microphone. I hate that sound. Um, so like there was another thing too when I talk about the kind of CrossFit things and um that idea of um there's I suppose there's a different right. I suppose the difference in when I'm talking about the coaching side of things. When I coach CrossFit, I'm not as comfortable as I am when I'm coaching jiu-jitsu. But when I'm coaching the jiu-jitsu women, apart from one of them who was there before COVID and had trained for about a year, maybe 2 years, everybody else is new. So if everybody else is new, you feel that you're grand. You know, you're able to teach them no problem because you're going for real fundamentals then. And I like to think what I hope to think after doing it for so long that I'd have the fundamentals nailed. So that was the worry about taking the CrossFit class and being a bit outside of the comfort zone. But the trust issues was the trust from Martin, I should say, was what kind of settled me a little bit. And to be fair, it's funny, like I when I was doing the second class, I shouted out, "All right, it's 7 o'clock or whatever it was," and I shouted, "Okay, everybody grab a bike there, we'll start the warm up." I think half the people in there just looked around as if to say, "Is he messing?" Like, because they just saw me as someone in there trains, not coaches. But everybody's very supportive. All the people who trained there were supportive and not giving me too much grief, and just getting on with their work. And again, they were doing it Thursday night, like, or was it Wednesday, whatever, bike sprints and stuff in that heat. It was incredible. I trained yesterday morning. I trained two CrossFit classes and a jiu-jitsu class. And honestly, after the second CrossFit class, I could have, just twisted out, sweat out my I know that's horrible, but sweat out my t-shirt. It was that warm because it was bike sprints as well, and there was other stuff. I'm actually feeling it now in my legs, like the amount of work we did. But um, it was really enjoyable. But it's just that how much water I have to drink to kind of replace that. It's I was just drinking water all day, just and what you're supposed to do. But yeah, it was those. It last week. This is one thing. Maybe it was 2 weeks ago, right? So it's there's a thing of being confident as well, or at least putting on the show of being confident when you have to stand in front of a group of people and tell them to grab the bike or skipping ropes, whatever. And that confidence was I was I was watching my mum was on. We were watching a documentary about Kate Bush, and obviously she's back in the headlines because of Stranger Things and running up the hill, being on kind of heavy rotation on the radio and stuff like that. Um, and what I kind of took from the episode is the supreme confidence of somebody in control, almost like a master of what they're doing and expressing themselves exactly how they want to express themselves. If you watch any kind of, she's a very private figure, Kate Bush, but if you watch any of her videos, that's like confidence. The stuff that she does in those videos is like supreme. Some of it's what we'd see is out there, but the confidence to kind of deliver what she's doing, um, and we can't think about what we don't know what she's like, really thinking deep down. But she goes out there and just does her dance routines and the way she sings her songs in particular, like falsettos and stuff, which aren't, I suppose, not a lot of people can do them. Never mind do them, but the way she introduces instruments that wouldn't normally be there. That's like the supreme confidence in the talents and the gifts you have, and none of us really. I wouldn't say give ourselves credit for the talents and gifts we have. We don't even recognize them half the time because the Irish maybe in us don't want to think it's a bit cocky to be talking about that, like. And I know people who are on the surface are very, very, very confident, but like deep down there's a bit, a lot of it is to maybe deflect from the lack of confidence that they really have about other issues. So I thought that was something I took from that, like of somebody completely in control of what they're trying to do, but with a confidence there that, you'd aspire to. Maybe, I don't know, will we ever get there is another question, but I'd certainly like I'd certainly like to get like half of that, you know. I'm not going to get that talent, by the way. I'm not talking about talent. Talent's one thing, but having the talent is somebody singing a song and producing it well and putting it out there. But the way she delivers in the song and makes a show and a performance of everything she does, it's like that's someone to really watch and aspire to be, because it's incredible. So it just left a mark on me with all the stuff I was thinking at the time, whenever it was the week of last week or the week before, that yeah, try and kind of harness some of that confidence from somewhere. Um, I know that this episode's called Therapy Thoughts and Tips. So another thing I was watching. So I don't know if people who are this kind of ties into the music, obviously, but I don't know if anybody watched the Woodstock '99 documentary. What's it called? It's Woodstock '99 something. Can't remember. But anyway, if anybody doesn't know the history of Woodstock '99, they tried to bring a peace and love idea from 30 years before. Michael Lang, the same dude that organized the first one, was involved. There was big money men involved, as there has to be at those kind of events, and it was absolute. It was terrible. It was awful. Like, I love the fact though, because Michael Lang said on the documentary that he didn't know who the bands were. So if you want to introduce a peace and love to an event, and some of these bands like Rage Against the Machine, I love them. They're class, political, rock band. Um, you had Korn, again, heavy new metal, whatever you want to call them. Limp Bizkit, new metal. Chili Peppers, I don't know what you call them, heavy rock maybe. Um, it's not quite the way Woodstock was. It wasn't Woodstock. It didn't exactly have like head banging performances at. So, but everything was wrong. Like the water fountains with queues that'll be in half an hour. Everything, the toilets were in an awful state after the first night. Um, the smell was meant to be atrocious. It was done around like an old military hangar, so everything was concrete. So it was like 100 degrees heat bouncing off the concrete. Everybody dehydrated, just drinking, booze, beer, whatever they had with them. Loads of jocks, as as you describe them, just being dickheads, and as all this was going on, the music was heavy and everybody's headbanging, and it just turned into like a kind of hell on earth. People started leaving early, and then they started burning things, and everything was going up in flames. And just when you see but it was partly like, you know, the people were out of control, but the situation that they were put in was not a thing for them. It wasn't how it should have been. Everything, nobody was going around picking up after them. So there were just piles of litter everywhere. It was just disrespect towards the people who were there, and then the disrespect was kind of aimed back at them from the punters, I suppose, who went paid to, everybody going to a festival doesn't expect to be sitting in lavish surroundings, but at least to have some, toilets that they can use, basic, facilities. And it looked, and as long as the festival went on, the price of the water went up, and it was up at $7 at one point. And then Limp Bizkit, who were kind of blamed for it, but they were a tiny part of a really badly organized event, but they were singing their song "Break Stuff," and then everybody literally started breaking stuff, and then there was sexual assaults reported at it, and towards the end of the documentary, the saddest thing is like the money men, the guys in charge never accept responsibility for what they did. It's always somebody else, it's like Fred Durst, who's the front man in Limp Bizkit. It's his fault. It's the Chili Peppers' fault for playing a cover of Jimi Hendrix Fire when they saw a fire burn in the distance. It's always someone else's fault. And that's the kind of sad and shocking thing about it, that yes, there were dickheads at the event who were there to. I wouldn't say that they were there to cause trouble, but once things started to go the wrong way, that's inevitably was going to go the way it went. But when you see the set list, that's what bothered not bothered me the most. I mean, there was violence committed against women and stuff is the worst stuff. But if you're looking at it from an event point of view, you can't get the idea of 69's peace and love into an era of 30 years later into the era of the 90s. It doesn't work that way. Just like the way it wouldn't work if you tried to do one now. It'd be a different situation. Like maybe you wouldn't have. I'm not saying you'd have fires and you'd have everything that they had, but you'd certainly have um, problems of a different nature. Like, what if someone didn't get their Wi-Fi went down? You know what I mean? Like, but no, it wouldn't. That's just that small thing. But like, something would be different in the way the Gen Z or whoever it is now would be upset about it if you treated them poorly. You got to treat people spend hundreds of dollars on a festival, a 3-day festival. They want to be respected by the organizers, and they weren't, and then they decided, well, if you don't show us respect, this is what's going to happen. So yeah, it's a very interesting documentary of like a time capsule back to 99 and what was going on in even in America, of what was going on in America at the time and what the youth were dealing with. It's interesting doing this show actually, this episode, because it's like I suppose like a little bit of a therapy session in itself at this stage, chatting through all this stuff. Apart from the Woodstock stuff, that's just something that came up I wanted to talk about when I wrote this episode there last week. I wanted to bring it up, and it is like I said, it's an interesting thing. But yeah, being able to kind of come on here and just talk about all the stuff I've been doing in therapy and not. It's very interesting to have people who listen to this podcast and that my trust in them is so high that I know that whatever comes to this podcast, whoever listens to, however many listen to it, there's not people who come back and say, but why don't you try it this way, try this way? Because I think it's hugely important for the people who are going through stuff to, if they want advice, they'll ask for it, and you like, people kindly give it, like Joanne and Tracy did for me. Excuse me, but it's not, but you should do this. There's never any of that, because I think that can be a good idea for people if you say you should do this. But if 6 or 7 people say it, it becomes just it's hard to kind of piece through that stuff. You can't try everything, so you go your own route. But if people are asking you for help, be willing to listen to them, give them your advice, and say, well, maybe you should go see a therapist, or even if it was a physical thing, maybe you should go see a massage therapist. I know there's not going to be a flood of people coming back, and that's important for me, because it's not it's not that I don't want the input from people, because I absolutely do. And from on every episode, people coming back and telling me that they enjoyed it, or they listened to it to this point, but then they were struggling with that. That's cool. That's the whole point. But the idea that I'd be so, if I thought that was going to happen, that everybody's like, well, you shouldn't try this, you should try this, that would freak me out. Well, not freak me out. It's a bit of an overstatement. There's something else actually. This is the moral quandary that I found myself in, that I mentioned on Facebook yesterday and stuff. There's the thing about buying me a coffee, that people have. What's it called? Is it Patreon? I think it's Patreon. But people give you like a couple of quid, and for the podcast and the work you're doing. And I said I'd never kind of ask for that, and this is not me asking for it, by the way. I'm just putting my thoughts out there. I haven't even said this, Sean. I just noticed actually, this is my if you're looking at this on YouTube, you can actually see my cauliflower ear because it turned it sticks out more, but it's starting misshapen now, as you can see in this area here. Anyway, see that one? Normal shaped ear. That one, not normal shaped ear. But anyway, you'd swear I was wrestling. Like, the lads would be laughing because I'm the person who does the least amount of wrestling in there. I'm very much just a sloth on the bottom that hangs on to people until they make a mistake, and then hopefully I can capitalize. But anyway, it's got nothing to do with this. So yeah, the option of buying me coffee, and I hear, I listen to a lot of podcasts and stuff, and everybody has that option where people can donate to the podcast. So great, fair enough. I didn't want anything to do with it, but last week I was kind of thinking about it. And again, this is not me saying I'm going to do it. This is just me voicing my opinions on it. By the time I'm finished voicing my opinions on it, I'm not going to immediately set up a thing on my page for you to donate if you would. That's not what's going to happen for now. But I wanted to kind of put it out there because I'm really uncomfortable talking about it. But I thought, look, this is a session, or this is an episode where I've been talking about my therapy and all the stuff I've been going through. So now let's be honest with people and just tell them what I've been thinking. So what's been interesting the last, not every guest, but some of the last few guests, they've all had books, and I've been kind of leaning towards getting guests on who have not every week, because I still want people from the town here to come on and chat to me about stuff like in people in bands and stuff. But I've been reading these books, and like the guest, I read a book. People probably saw me put it up, about ballerina, an Irish ballerina. The book I'm reading now is about politics and music, the power of politics and music, because the person who wrote that is going to be coming on to talk. So a lot of the guests that I'm kind of approaching have been either written books or, or like I had Ella on, the anthropologist. She's written papers about certain things that I found fascinating. So, but they that's costs. It costs money to buy the books. Obviously, I tend to buy them off. I buy them online or read them on my iPad, because obviously they're much quicker than ordering a book and having to get it. And especially when I have a quick turnaround of the book that I'm reading and the guest that's coming on, I need to get to it kind of quickly. So that's costing a bit of money, and there's a little bit of cost on advertising as well on what we do. So and I realize that's another thing. Like, people could be saying, and this is probably something I'd be thinking, saying, well, you don't have to have guests on to write books, or you don't have to advertise the podcast, and you don't have to do that. Well, I don't understand that, but like, there's a deep within what we were trying to do from the start, myself and John. It would, the whole point is to get this out there to people, who not only may need to hear it, but just people who might want to hear it. It's a different. That's the great thing about podcasts. It's like radio, like it's just independent radio, and if you think it's like flitting between guests, you don't have to listen to last week's guest, but you might want to listen to next week's, because it might have more to do with your life. With music, like Dave Randall, who's coming on next, who wrote this book that I'm talking about. He was in the band Faithless for 15 years. He played with Dido. He played with Sinead O'Connor. People might be fascinated by that. I'm fascinated by that. That's why I'm having him on. But to have him on, I have to be, genuine and work hard to get a good interview. So I have to read the book, and the book appeals to me anyway. And it's a fascinating book, by the way. But and we'll be talking more about it next week, actually. But yeah, so it all costs a little bit of money, and fortunately, because Martin's been giving me a little bit of extra responsibilities, and I've been getting a little bit of extra money, so I don't have to worry about it so much. And like, if I was to do this, there's not a single chance that I would allow either of my parents to donate to it, because the amount of support, both emotionally and financially, they have given me, they're not allowed to give me buy me a coffee or whatever on Patreon, because they have done way more than enough to help me, in life and with this podcast, I must say. Because if we talk about confidence, knowing if nobody else was going to listen to it, knowing that two people, the most important people to me, are listening to it every week, that gives me confidence alone. So they would be forbidden from, now I hope, well, I know you're both listening, forbidden from giving me donations if I was to set this up. Listen, to everybody else, I know I said I wasn't going to do this. I still don't know if I'm going to do this. I just wanted to put out there. Feel free to call me a hypocrite on every level, uh, because it will probably be justified. Um, but we'll see. Look, I just wanted to put it out there and say, I like you can probably tell how uncomfortable the last 10 minutes have been for me, but this is where I find myself, and that's kind of it. But yeah, it's been a very interesting and rewarding 6 weeks of doing this therapy, um, wanting to talk about it on the podcast, but really finding it difficult to until when I wrote this last week, finding it difficult to get to to find a way in. That was the hard part because it's where do you start? Like it was because so much of it, like I haven't brought up 50% of the stuff we've been talking about, and it's all significant to me. But I was trying to find exactly where I could start that conversation of where I started with the therapy with Kenneth, and have a kind of a good a line from A to B from where where I was going in thinking this was what we were going to do to where I found out what we were going to do now, thinking about it now, and I'm back again next Thursday. But um, I think the first 3 or 4 sessions were very difficult afterwards because I was carrying the stuff, you know, out of the room with me. I was, going home with this stuff and um analyzing it, just the way my own thoughts go. And I think the last couple of weeks I haven't. What I've taken from it is the positive stuff. So the stuff that I'm kind of musing on the next day or the next, over the weekend or whatever, is the positive stuff and the things I should be looking at to change. Where at the start I was just feeling like, oh, how did self-worth come up? That's heavy enough. But in order to get from there to there, we had to bring it up. Like, that's why people like Kenneth are in the jobs they're in, because they can figure this out. They can, from what I said about, the control that I needed in time and spaces and events or whatever, Kenneth can kind of dig a bit deeper than I can go on myself, and we can figure out where this comes from, where it started, how we can approach it from a different way in order to make it easier for me to deal with. Um, and obviously, I'm still dealing with the time issue, and I'm still dealing with the OCD. But I can feel it. I can feel the kind of the movement, the change, and how I hope it can come about. So I think if you feel that you need to speak to someone, and somebody who's trained, a professional, I believe you certainly should, and you should not see it as a negative to be doing that. Like, you should definitely see it as a positive, because that's you're taking the bull by the horns, and taking control of your life by going to somebody who can help you figure out some of the stuff that you've been going through and dealing with. It's too important not to do it. Like, friends are great, family are great, but unless they're trained in how to dig a little deeper than the surface level that you're thinking on, it's not going to be enough. So approach it with the idea that this is for me. This is like, and I know this analogy is used an awful lot, but if you felt physically ill, you'd go to a doctor to get it sorted. We shouldn't think any different about people, mental health professionals anyway. They should be thought of as, the same as doctors that are to help you get through some stuff that you've been going with. Um, I wonder, have you been enjoying the weather this week? It's, by this time this comes out Wednesday, it's supposed to have dropped like 10 degrees. I'll be honest, I'll be quite happy about that. Um, I've been given out to by a couple of people over the last, well, forever. No, but the last few days or week or two about complaining about the heat. But the fact of the matter is, I wasn't built for this. It was never my thing. And I think I had I had the misfortune of suffering from when I was over in New Jersey with my mom and my brothers. We believe I got sunstroke, but whatever it was horrendous. And I think ever since then, I think everything about it is, I want to avoid it. Um, I went out to, if people are from Athlone, they'll know Coosan Point. So I went out there. I can't remember. I think it was Wednesday, or no, it's not Wednesday, maybe Tuesday, and just the heat was relentless. And we found a little spot to sit down and have something to eat. But like we were in. I think we were in the shade when we were eating, but we went out to like throw some, like try to do some skimming stones, and the heat just felt just like on the back, like pulsing on my back, and I was and my head, because it's shaved, you forget about it, and then your head starts to itch. You're going, oh, I think my head's burning. So I haven't been enjoying it all that much. Uh, although like yesterday evening was quite nice when it cooled a few degrees, and we were just sitting out, and it was rather pleasant. But anyway, this is not a weather show. It's not the weather forecast. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed it, the heat. And listen, I hope you enjoyed this episode. It was important to share these thoughts. I've wanted to do it for a couple of weeks now, and this seemed like the appropriate gap in guests to do it. Like I said, keep coming back. It's funny, like episode 133, and I keep thinking we're only getting started, but we are only getting started. Like episode 133 is obviously, it's a big number, but we're going to be going higher and higher and higher. So, and the guests are going to keep on coming, and I hope that they're going to be as interesting as each of the ones that came before them. I obviously want to thank John for the technical work. He's actually, and John, if you're listening, stellar work you've been putting in recently, and couldn't do without you. My head would be wrecked. I'd be talking about it with Kenneth, to be honest with you, if I had to do all that kind of technical stuff that freaks me out. I want to thank my mom, my dad, as always, my granddad, Jaron Calvin. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. That would be most helpful. It won't be annoying you all the time with notifications. You will literally get one notification a week. It's only one episode a week. So if you don't mind just getting that one notification a week, just click subscribe. You don't have to have a YouTube channel. You literally just open YouTube. Even if you don't use it, open YouTube, go to the Wheatley, hit subscribe under the video. That's all. Excuse me. God, my voice is gone. We're on Instagram, we're on Facebook, we're on Twitter. Thank you for all your support on there. All those likes do mean a lot. Spotify, Apple Anchor, Google Podcasts, etc. And thanks to everyone for tuning in. It's been a really great episode. I really appreciate you listening to me go on for this length of time. Have a lovely week. Take care of yourselves, and we will see you next week for some more. Bye now.